Hey everybody, it's Mike Trump with Oak Ridge Barbecue. I thought we'd do something a little bit different today. Instead of talking about barbecue, we're going to talk about knives. We're actually specifically what's in my knife roll. So we're going to dig them out. We're going to see what's in there. Got a couple knife rolls to look at, different styles, shapes, some Japanese knives, some European style knives, different steels. We'll talk about it all. Hopefully we'll give you some knowledge and maybe some ideas for Christmas gifts. Who knows? It is that time of year. So sit back, relax. It's after 5 here, so I've poured a nice little dram. Hopefully if you're able, you can enjoy one with me. And we'll get into it. So we'll be right back. All right, we're back. So, 2 knife rolls. One's kind of a beater set, and the other's sort of the, I don't know, nice set, I guess, if you will. We'll set the nice set aside. We'll talk about it here in just a second. Let's open up the beater set. All right. So what do we got here? Let's talk about this one first. Boning knife. I think this one's a Forstner. No, Victronics. They're kind of all the same. Victronics, Forstner, F-Dick. There's a few others in the same stamped stainless steel variety. It's real handy. It's not my sharpest knife in a box, but it will certainly sharpen up nicely. And sometimes there's just certain things like skinning that silver skin off of a brisket on the lean side. You just can't really beat one of these. I think this is a medium stiff boning knife. It's got a little bit of flex to it, but not a lot. It's got a nice belly here, and the thing I like about it the most is it's not one of those boning knives where it's got that recurve section right here that's a pain in the ass to sharpen. So this one's just a nice swept edge all the way to the point, and real easy to sharpen on stones, and very handy to have around. Not real expensive either. 10, 15 bucks I think is about what that one goes for. Okay, well, let's just work down the list. This one is a santoku in the wa style, so it's a Japanese handle on a tang. That's embedded in the handle just by heat and force usually. I'm not a real big fan of the santoku profile. I may not be saying that right. I guess disclaimer, you're listening to a redneck, so hopefully I say most of this stuff right, but I'll probably get some of it wrong, so bear with me. I'm not real good at pronouncing some of the Japanese names. So what you've got here is you've got 2 layers, actually 3 layers of steel. You've got a soft stainless steel on the outside on both sides, and then sandwiched in the middle, and this particular knife happens to be a blue, super blue steel, which is a Japanese steel. Very, very hard, well above 60, probably 60, even above 63 Rockwell hardness. And it's non-stainless, so I don't know if you can see, if the camera will focus in on that, but I don't know if there's even good light on it. Let me try it like that. Anyway, there's a little bit of rust on here. I need to take care of this one. This one's been kind of the beater knife in the knife drawer in our kitchen. Kids and wife use it too, and don't always clean it off whenever they're done using it right away, dry it off, things like that. So we'll cover sharpening actually in another video coming up here real soon. And that one will be a candidate for sure because it's dull as hell. Let's get this one out of the way. If you've never played with a Chinese cleaver, you need to. They're fun. Real cheap, like 33, 35 bucks. I don't know. It's a CCK, I think is what it was. And I don't remember the number. Maybe a number 10. I don't have to look it up. I'll put it in the comments or in the section down below in the notes, show notes, I guess they call it. But very kind of heavy, but also very thin. So if you can see how thin that is. It's not made for hacking bones, not made for, chopping like that at all. It's a very fine edge tool that's for dicing work. You can make a mess of diced vegetables, onions, whatever, on a cutting board with this puppy. Real fun. I don't use it all the time, but it's lots of fun. Carbon steel too, so you'll notice it's got a patina on it. I don't know if that shows up in the light. And that's just kind of what happens with carbon steel, and it's okay. And I like the patina. It kind of shows a story of the knife, kind of what it's done. Let's go next. So every knife set is not complete without a chef's knife. This happens to be a Japanese pattern chef's knife called a gyuto. It's a standard Western handle. And the nice thing about this particular type of pattern is it doesn't have a bolster here that gets in the way of your sharpening or even cutting. You can cut really nicely all the way down to the heel of the knife with this type of a knife shape. Okay. This one happens to be, I think, a 300 or 300 millimeter. Yeah. So it's almost 12 inches, I think, or a little bit over 12 inches. I use this for brisket, fresh, warm brisket. Slices it really nice. I've got a different knife I use for cold brisket if I slice it cold. Another one's very similar. Oh, by the way, this is Hiramoto was the maker of this. They no longer make this particular knife. It was in their high carbon steel series. So this is a solid high carbon steel blade. There are no laminations. It's just the same steel all the way through. It's forged, but I think it's mostly probably stamped. So it's a lower end. I mean, I think I bought this for, oh gosh, it was over 15 years ago, but still, it still wasn't more than like 80, 85, 90 bucks. It really wasn't very expensive at all. But very, very sharp, super, super thin too for its size, and very light. Excellent balance point for as that big of a knife, if you can see that right there. I mean, that's a really nice balance point. So you don't wear yourself out when you use it. All right, next down the line in the beater set is the one, probably my workhorse of all of them. The same Hiramoto high carbon as the bigger one. This one happens to be a 240 millimeter, sorry, not inch, millimeter. 240 millimeter gyuto. And that's the workhorse size. 240 is probably the sweet spot for most people. Some people like a 210, which is slightly shorter, you know, somewhere in this range. Then there's also a 270, which goes out to about here. Then, of course, there's the 300, like I just showed you. But again, very nimble, very light, very thin, solid steel. It's a high carbon steel, so as you can tell, the blade is patinaed really nicely. And that's just a natural protective coating. It just kind of, everything you cut with it turns it a different color. And it's just sort of a story, sort of like scars, if you will, of a knife. That's kind of cool. So I don't worry about it. I don't like rust. I don't let them rust. You definitely need to dry them off anytime you're using them. Dry them off frequently, and don't store them wet. Definitely never the dishwasher. Okay, this one happens to be one of my very first chef knives. This is a Henckels, the two-man kind, the original double dude. I guess I don't know, the little two guys. Instead of this knives that are made in Spain now, that just has a one guy. Whatever. So this is stainless steel. It's also a Rockwell hardness in the mid-50s, so probably 54 or 55, I think. These other knives I showed you here, the Japanese knives, are all above 60, so they're considerably harder. This one's my chicken whacking knife. I mean, if I need to cut through chicken bones or cut through chicken wings, or let's see, what if pumpkins, the kids want their pumpkins carved out, like the tops cut out or whatever, big squash, things that could damage these Japanese steel knives because of the hardness. This steel being less brittle definitely has a function, and it's very useful to have around. The thing I don't like is this full-length bolster here. You'll see that it goes all the way to the edge, so that makes it a real pain in the ass to sharpen, because you just can't get the sharpening stone in here. I don't use anything else besides hand stones, but some people like to use other gadgets and whatnot, and they're even worse because then there's no way you can get the gadget in there that close because this thing blocks it. So I think Messermeister is another European chef knife that doesn't have this bolster at the end. It's shaped much more like a Japanese knife, and those are probably the better bet versus a Wusthof or a Henckels like this. That has that bolster. So if you're looking for a good European style chef knife, I highly recommend like the Messermeister brand. It's a very similar steel than Henckels or Wusthof. So you know, it's very you're comfortable. You still don't want to put them in the dishwasher. But you can be a little more rough with them, I guess, because the steel will bend instead of chip, okay? This one is my cold brisket slicer. It's also a really damn nice bread knife. It's the Wusthof Super Slicer. It's the forged version. It's got scallops in the edge instead of serrated, so they don't go in, they go out like this. I don't know if you can see that. So it makes a real nice slice on bread. So if it's crusty bread, it doesn't make a lot of crumbs. And if it's a good brisket, it doesn't tear your brisket up either, especially when it's cold. It'll slice through that really nicely. All right, let's see, some smaller knives. The jack of all trades knife, the one I probably use most often for all things whenever I'm not grabbing one of my other Japanese knives, is this little guy. It's a Hinkle's sandwich knife. I think it's like no, what is it? It's 160 millimeters. I don't know exactly. I'll have to look up what I mean. But anyway, it's a little over 4 inches. Okay, maybe close to, yeah, about 4.5 inches. And it's just not, I mean, for brisket prep, trimming briskets and whatnot, this is one of my most favorite knives to do the brisket trimming. Just something short, stout, you know, and it's that European stainless steel, so it doesn't chip, and you can kind of give it, you can be a little rough with it if you need to, and it won't hurt anything. All right, moving on. This one is kind of a handmade deal. I don't even know what pattern that is. Hanosuki maybe. This actually used to be a knife similar to this one that I broke, and I sent it off to a guy. Unfortunately, the guy's since passed away. He lived in Hawaii, and he took and he cut this knife out of the old knife, and then put a new edge on it, put a handle on it, and shipped it back to me. Did it all for free just because he was a nice guy on the internet, guy that I'd met on the internet talking about kitchen knives, of all things. So that was that was a neat deal. I use that one quite frequently too, for little stuff. Then I got this little guy. I don't even remember what this was called. I just wanted it. It was kind of cool, real neat looking shape. Again, it's the Wah style, so it's a wooden handle with a non-full tang. Okay, just kind of jammed in there so it stays. Again, it's soft stainless on both sides with a really hard super blue Japanese steel inside. Man, you can get these things just, I mean, splitting hair sharp. It's crazy how sharp they're. Like, I almost cut myself right there. All right, so that's a real quick rundown of what's in this beater box, or beater bag, my knife bag here. We'll come right back, and we'll go through the good set. We'll be right back. We're back. All right, so this is the good set. Not that any of those knives are bad. I think some of these I have in here maybe a little bit more collectible, or perhaps, or I don't have any. I mean, there's guys that will spend way more money than I'll ever spend on a knife. Thousands and thousands of dollars on some of these knives, and they're worth it because I guess they're worth it if you're into the artistry of it. The handmade aspects of these knives are really quite astounding. The fact that a master bladesmith, you know, almost like a swordsmith in a way, but they're such masters of the art of forging knives. They can take, you know, just chunks of steel and bend them and melt them and bend them and fold them and bend them and melt them, and come out with these just beautiful knives, these cutting instruments that make, I mean, the neat thing is they're beautiful. The sort of practical thing is that they make the kitchen chores, you know, prepping a 50-pound bag of onions or a 50-pound sack of potatoes, at least a little more fun, because you're not fighting the knife. You're not fighting every cut, trying to get it through the food, you know, breaking a tomato skin, let's say, or bruising it, things like that, you know, where the knife just slides right through whatever you're cutting, including your finger if you're not careful. So definitely lots of care is needed with these types of knives. So let's go through what we got here. So we've got different coverings on these, on most of them anyway. These are called sayas. These are just wooden sheaths, sort of. They protect the knives. They keep them from banging into one another or getting dull, things like that. And this one doesn't have that. This actually is pretty much a beater knife, but it still was handmade, hand wrought, and it's kind of cool. It didn't cost me. I think Heat a Tool had it. Oh, it was like 40 or 50 bucks. It was a steel. It's got like, I think it's like anchor chain, like old ship anchor chain is what the outside layers are on the outside. And then the inside again is that super blue steel, which is one of my favorite cutting knife steels of all of them. It just, the carbon grain structure is so fine, and it is able, and especially if it has a really good hardening to it, it is able to take such a razor sharp fine edge. You're able to get that edge, you know, at the molecular level almost, so sharp at the very, very edge of it, with just, you know, Japanese water stones and maybe some diamond paste on a lapping leather strop. So I mean, it's amazing how sharp you can get that steel. So that's one of the, and it also it sharpens it sharpens very easily. It works very easily. So super blue is definitely one of my go-to steels for sure. So anyway, this is a Yusuba, I think is what this is. I can't remember that. I may be wrong on that. Somebody correct me if I'm wrong. Or a Nikiri, one of those two. It's either Yusuba or a Nikiri. Okay. It's a vegetable knife for those that. So it's dicing, slicing. Onions, peppers, all sorts of vegetables that are thin-skinned and not like it doesn't do so well with root vegetables. It'll do okay, but the more like the peppers, the onions, tomatoes, stuff like that. Okay, super great knife for that. All right, let's see. This one is, I think, my only Damascus pattern knife. I don't know if this will show up on camera. Try to get the light just right on it and the camera to focus in on it. See if it shows up. So Damascus is one of those things where it's really, it has no function in today's world really, other than aesthetics. It used to, way back in, there were, Damascus was the only way they could make steel, and it was really very pretty. It had lots of layers. You could see the different layers. And it was thought to be, you know, the finest steel of the day. Well, modern steels are so much better than Damascus steels, even the modern Damascus steels. So the only time they're really used today in knives is just for the outer covering. It's that inner steel that makes it all the way to the edge is what's really important. And in this case, that's again super blue on this. And again, it's so I don't put a lot of, you know. There's no magic in a Damascus knife. It just is. It looks pretty. So it's an aesthetics thing. I'm definitely not against aesthetics. I mean, these things themselves, just even without, you know, the Damascus or with it, they're beautiful to me. I think they're really, really pretty. Okay, and if you can't tell, there's a theme here. I really like the gyuto pattern. It's a chef knife. So you know, chef knives are really kind of do-it-all knives. They're you can do just if you're a chef. I'm not, but if you are, most chefs do most everything with a chef's knife. They can core an apple. They can do everything but some really, really fine work with a chef's knife. This one happens to be probably my nicest knife in the collection. It's a gyuto again, 240 millimeter. It's a Hanyaki. I think I'm saying that right. So it's a solid steel, but it's forged from a much smaller block, and it has a Hammond line, and this one isn't very apparent, but a Hammond line is where there's differential tempering, and what they do is they temper the edge really hard, and then they temper the spine at a different temperature so it's softer, so it protects from, if you're chopping, it protects the knife from breaking. It allows you to get a much harder edge, harder steel at the edge, while protecting it, the knife itself, by having a softer steel. Same steel, but it's actually softer up here towards the spine. This one, the seller was basically certified this knife was one of the very last knives made personally by Hiramoto himself. I think that's the guy's name. Sorry. I can't remember all these names, but at any rate, it's a really neat knife, and it's super sharp. And I haven't cut anything with it. It's kind of one of those collector items that because it has the significance of it being one of his very last knives before he retired, and I'm not even sure if he's alive anymore, that I don't think I really want to use it. Okay, from that I go to my laser. They call it a laser because it is super thin. And just to kind of give you an idea, here's that Hinkles. So on the Hinkles, your standard European chef's knife, compared to this Konosuke, or Konuski, I think that's how you pronounce it now. I think I was saying it wrong. It's Konuski. See how much thinner this one is than this one? It's like half as thin. So that means it just flies through whatever you're cutting. and it's such a fun knife to chop and dice with, slice with. It's just, it really is like a laser. So this one happens to be HD tool steel, which is, I think, their proprietary semi-stainless steel. So it sharpens real well, keeps an edge really nicely. It's like 63 Rockwell hardness, which means it's pretty damn hard. And so it will chip. I have had to take a couple chips out of the edge of this one, and a few of my others too. It's got a neat handle. I like that. You know, the contrast between the buffalo horn here and the ebony wood here. It kind of looks neat. All right, moving on. Next one. This one is again a A2 tools. I'm sorry. This is a super blue core stainless, soft stainless sides. If you can see, I won't touch it. I'll cut myself. But if you can see, you can actually see where the stainless stops and the blue steel starts because of the difference in the color right there at the edge. You can see that. It's just kind of cool. It really it stains up nicely because the super blue steel will take on a patina and the stainless steel will not. So anyway, it's kind of on the thick side, a little on the heavy side, so I don't use it all that often, but it's pretty cool. And I can't remember the manufacturer on this one. I'm going to tell you where you can get all this stuff here in just a minute. Okay, last one. This one I got because I've never had one of these before. I don't know that I'll ever use it, maybe. It's one of those really unique knives that has a very unique purpose. It's called a Deba, or Deba. I don't know if I'm pronouncing it right. Well, I talk so much, I ran out of tape, and I just kept talking. So, it's not like me. I don't talk too much. I don't talk forever. Anybody that knows me, that's exactly how I am. All right, well, let me pick up where it cut off. This final knife is called a Deba. I believe I'm pronouncing that correctly. It's big and heavy. It looks the same as these other gyutos. It has that same sort of parabolic shape, you know, it looks like sort of like a front of a football. But it's super thick, okay? It's like a sharpened crowbar, if you want to think about it like that. And it's for heavy cutting. So chopping bones. Fish bones typically a lot of times, but I mean, you can use it on chicken bones, all sorts of stuff. And the edge will probably deform a little bit, but not near as bad as it would on some of these others. So super thick. It's one-sided, so it doesn't have a bevel on both sides of the blade. It has just a bevel on one side, just this side right there. And the other side is actually concave. It's not flat. It goes in and comes back out. So then whenever you sharpen it, you sharpen this edge here, which is called the blade way. I think that's what it's called. And then you sharpen across the back, and that makes a perfect edge right here at the very edge, right through there, right along there. So anyway, that's a Deba. I don't think I've ever used it yet, but it's a handy one to have if you really need to do heavy chopping and you don't want to mess up your thinner knives. So I guess bonus round, I got to mention these guys. These are Tojiro is the brand name. They're stainless steel. I think they call them inox, which is inox, yeah, is Japanese for stainless. And they're awesome kitchen shears. They come apart for cleaning. Super awesome feature. Go right back together. And man, they are just sharp. They're sharp as shit. And you're talking about, you know, prepping chicken skins on your chicken thighs for your contest guys. These scissors like this, and especially these, there's a few others, but these are pretty easy to get hold of on a couple of websites we'll talk about later. And they're like $80. So they're a little on the spendy side for scissors, but I mean, they're super nice scissors, and they're so sharp. And then lastly is these big ass honking tweezers, and they're actually bone tweezers for like salmon bones and whatnot, but all sorts of uses for big ass tweezers. So got a set like that. That's pretty much the knife roll set, both of them. I have a lot of fun. You know, I'm a kind of a, as you can guess, kind of a foodie guy. I like to cook. Definitely like to eat, if you can tell. But you know, I just enjoy using really good, really nice tools that make the job all that much easier. At least, if not, they do make it easier, but they also make, for me, it makes it more enjoyable. Just the the ability to have a knife, you know, so sharp that it just falls right through a tomato. You don't have to worry about bruising the skin, or falls right through an onion, and you can cut it and run your dice. Just perfect. You know, you end up with these really nice shaped little perfect dice. It just makes it doesn't necessarily make the food taste any better, but it sure helps the presentation. I really feel like it does. So let's talk about websites. I got a list over here, kind of off camera, so don't forget what they are. First and foremost, Japanese chef's knife. That's a chef's plural, all one word, JapaneseChefsKnife.com. I'll put the link down here somewhere. I'll also put it in the show notes in the description. That's probably where most of these knives, not all of them, but most of them came from. The gentleman that runs it, his name is Koki. It's actually in Japan. So when you go on their website, you're looking at knives that right in Siki City is where they're made, most of them, and that's where he lives, and that's where his shop is. And you buy them there, and he ships them. I think it used to be like $7 for maybe up to 2 or 3 knives, and it was like shipped via EMS, which is like their version of next day air type stuff, or FedEx next day. You get them in a couple days, even through customs. They really fly through. So I highly recommend JapaneseChefsKnife.com, and go in there, check them out. There's lots of cool stuff. Really neat knives. Second one is another one that I shop at a lot, is Chef's Knife to Go, right? Oh, sorry, Chef's Knives with a plural. Chef Knives to Go. I'll get this right. I'll put it down there so there's no question about it. But Chef Knives to Go. Great shop, all sorts of really cool stuff, and probably the best, one of the best, if not the best, sharpening equipment website, period. Talking about leather strops, sharpening compounds, diamond pastes, all kinds of sharpening stones with Japanese water stones. The one thing they don't have a lot of, I guess, would be the natural stones. There are other sites for that. But definitely all you'd ever really need is right there at that shop, for sure. I don't get paid by any of these guys. I buy everything with my own money. They don't give me anything. I just like to recognize good companies that are doing a great job. So these are definitely, my list has been well vetted, I guess. Nothing else by me. So another one I've had a lot of fun at is Hida Tool, H-I-D-A Tool, Hida Tool. It's a Japanese woodworking site, but they have some really neat knives as well. So I think that's where this one came from. This one was a Hida Tool knife, that one right there. Super cheap. I think like I said, I think I spent less than $40 for it. You know, I mean, there's some, yeah, the ferrule. Oh shit, the ferrule's a little loose. It needs some glue on there or something. But for $40, it's a hell of an onion chopper like you ain't ever seen. So cool knife. Another one, if you live in New York, you maybe have been to this one. It's called Korin. So it's KORIN.com. Awesome selection of sharpening, like natural stones, as well as really super high-end Japanese knives. I mean, some of these knives you can pay, well, if you want to, I guess that's what they ask for. I mean, you can pay tens of thousands of dollars for some of these knives, believe it or not. Not any of these. No, not any of these. No, but they're there. You can. They're like works of art, almost like samurai swords, but in chef knife form. Really cool stuff. Then another new one, if you're newer to me anyway, I think they're relatively new in the market, is Carbon Knife Company. If you're in the Denver area, they got a hell of a showroom there. Really neat place. CarbonKnifeCo.com. That's a really good one. Follow them on Instagram a lot. Really neat stuff there. And then the last one would be, and not last for any particular reason, other than just last on my list, Cutlery and More. So if you're more into like the Messermeister I was talking about before, they'll have that Messermeister as well as lots of other European knives. They have a few Japanese knives, but quite a bit more of the European stuff. So what is it with all these Japanese knives? What's so great about them, I guess? I mean, if you've been watching on, you know, cooking shows, anything on the Food Network, especially like, it's that cooking show where they, Iron Chef, that's what it is. Been a long day. Hold on. Hold on a second. I need some stat. Let's take this. Okay. Maybe I can think now. All right. Yeah. Iron Chef, especially like the earlier Iron Chef, the original Iron Chef. That's when you really started seeing Japanese knives showing up on cooking channels. Why are they so good? There's a reason why more and more chefs are going to them. They still have their downfalls, but the fact that they're so thin and they're so sharp and they're so light, it's really all about balance too. So when you're spending all day cutting up shit, all day, you got to have something that's not going to wear you out, like wear you slick. So like this knife, which again is one of my favorites, Kanuski HD, and they make an HD2 now, I think. Look at this. See, this is the balance point on it. Let me get it to balance on these big booger hooks here. All right, pretty good right there. So it's just right there on the heel. Why is that important? Well, because that's where you grab it in a pinch grip, just like that. So you don't hold a chef knife like a fishing pole. Okay, you're not casting, you're cutting, and you don't put your finger there like this. Mostly, you don't do either one of those two because you don't have a lot of control. If you're cutting something and what you're cutting has, I don't know, a bone in it or some grain that forces the knife a different way, the knife can take a turn, and you don't really have any way to stop it. Okay. Because you don't have any control. I mean, you have control here, but you don't really have any control on this heel portion of the blade. So you use a pinch grip, and that gives you a lot more control. Plus, it balances the knife, and you're not really putting a lot of pressure back here. These fingers aren't doing a lot of work other than just sort of stabilizing. Most all of the grip is just right here, your thumb and your index finger. So it's really important that a knife balances where you grip it. And these knives just do that. That's their thing, I guess, really. Especially the gyutos, and this one happens to be a 270 millimeter, which you can get by with in a wa gyuto because it doesn't have that heavy handle and the bolster of the European style knife, so you can get extra length and have the same balance or better balance with it. So that's why that's why that and the steels. So the Japanese are clever in the way that in their industry, they only let other Japanese makers use Japanese manufactured steel. So if you're an American maker, with the exception like Murray Carter, but he was trained by a Japanese master, so he has sort of like a special way in, if you will. But so if you're a Japanese knife maker, you can use all of the Hitachi steels and some others, and I'm not quite familiar with their names, but I know there are a couple others that are really, I guess, sort of designed for this purpose. They have very, very fine grain structure. So the carbide granules in them are very, very small on a molecular level. They can reach a very high hardness without becoming too brittle. And they sharpen relatively easily, and they retain that edge for a very long time. So you're able to get them sharper. They stay sharper longer. The blades are thinner. They cut easier because they're sharper and they're thinner. So there's all these advantages. They balance better. They're just a better tool, honestly, in many regards. So that's why you're seeing more and more of the Japanese knives everywhere. So you have to be careful if you don't want to get ripped off, because there's some brands out there that are not worth what they're charging. So if you go to the websites I've given you, look at what knives they have for sale there. If you see some of the ones advertised on Facebook or Instagram or some places like that, or maybe even by some barbecue celebrities, and you don't see them at any one of these knife dealers, you may not be getting the best quality for your money. I mean, if the price is low, then it shouldn't be any big deal. But if they're charging $80, $90, $100 per knife, you can do the same thing at any one of those places I just was mentioning, websites. For $80, you can get something very similar to this, which is a much better cutting tool than any of that stuff they're selling. I don't mean anything personal. I just don't like seeing anybody getting ripped off. That's really the thing. I'm always all about getting the most bang for your buck. I mean, I don't have a lot of bucks, so I like a lot of bang. You know what I'm saying? And that's really what I like to focus on, is just trying to find the best tool for the best price. And that's some of those that they're selling now. They're just not that. If you like them, that's cool. Nothing wrong with that at all. But I just don't want to. I don't want to see anybody get ripped off. So check out those websites. Like I said, I have nothing to do with them personally. I just buy from them. They've like I said, most of these knives have come from all of those places, and I really enjoy. They have a great selection. They have a lot of neat things to look at. So anyway, that has been fun for me. I kind of like doing a little show and tell every once in a while. I guess everybody does. And hopefully you enjoyed what kind of what we talked about. If you have any questions, as always, questions at oakridgebbq.com. Throw them my way. I want to hear them. I want to answer them. I want to talk to you about them. You can always call on our phone line. I answer the phone every time. I'm the owner, and I answer the phone. So if you want to talk to me about Oak Ridge Barbecue, I'd be happy to. If you want to talk to me about Japanese chef knives, give me a call. Be happy to talk about that. And I thank you for watching the video. We'll have some neat stuff coming up. I do want to do a sharpening video, kind of do some beginning level instruction on how to, if you end up buying one of these knives, and maybe not these, but just a Japanese knife, and you want to learn how to sharpen by hand, which is really the best way to do it. I'll be happy to show you. It's really not that hard, and it's not very expensive to get into that either. So these knife rolls are great. If you get some knives, get you something to protect them. Don't just throw them in your drawer. Don't run them through the dishwasher. Hand wash only. Just be careful. Don't cut your fingers off when you're doing it. I mean, some of these knives, I've literally cut fingerprints off. They're so sharp, and I'm not exaggerating. I mean, literally just shaved fingerprints off when I've been sharpening them. So just be careful with them, but have fun with them. And like I said, any questions at oakridgebbq.com. Love to hear from you. See you next time. Thanks a lot.